Valen Korath had served the Ascendancy for 40 years. He had watched 17 wars from observation stations, just like this one. He had seen empires fall and species surrender. He had documented the rise and collapse of military powers across 3 galactic sectors. Nothing had ever surprised him. That was about to change. The assignment came on a quiet morning. His supervisor, a tall insectoid named Director Morath, handed him a data tablet with the casual attitude of someone giving away garbage. "New species," Morath said. "They call themselves humans. They have gotten into a conflict with the Vrexian Dominion over some border colony. Standard observation protocol. Document everything. File reports every cycle." Valen took the tablet and scanned the information. Humans. He had heard the name before. A young species from a small planet called Earth. They had discovered faster than light travel only 60 years ago. In galactic terms, they were infants. "The Vrexians have 800 years of space warfare experience," Valen said. "This will be over quickly." "That is what we expect," Morath agreed. "The humans have 34 ships defending the colony. The Vrexians are sending 200. It should be finished within a few days. Simple documentation assignment. Consider it a vacation." Valen almost smiled. A vacation. After 40 years of watching bloody conflicts across the stars, he would finally get to observe something simple. A quick war. A fast surrender. Perhaps the humans would learn their place in the galaxy without too much suffering. He traveled to the observation station orbiting the contested world. The humans called it New Helsinki. It was a cold planet with thick forests and deep oceans. 60,000 humans lived there in scattered settlements. They had been there for only 20 years. The station floated in high orbit, far from any potential combat zone. Valen set up his equipment and began his research on the human species. What he found was mostly uninteresting. Humans were bilateral mammals with 2 arms and 2 legs. They came from a planet with higher than average gravity. Their world had extreme temperatures, ranging from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. They breathed oxygen and ate both plants and animals. The biological report classified them as Category 3 persistence predators. Valen had seen this classification before. It meant humans had evolved to hunt by chasing prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Many primitive species had similar backgrounds. It was nothing special. Their technology was adequate, but not impressive. Their ships were functional, but not elegant. Their weapons were powerful, but not sophisticated. Everything about them seemed ordinary. Valen filed his preliminary report and waited for the Vrexian fleet to arrive. He spent 3 days studying human culture and history. He found them to be a strange species. They had only unified their planet recently. Before that, they had spent most of their existence fighting each other. War after war after war. Their history was written in blood. But that was common for young species. Most civilizations went through violent periods before maturing. The Ascendancy had helped guide many such species toward peace. Humans would be no different. Once they experienced real galactic warfare, they would understand that violence was not the answer. On the 4th day, the Vrexian fleet arrived. Valen watched them drop out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 200 warships arranged in the classic Vrexian attack pattern. Battleships in the center. Cruisers on the flanks. Destroyers screening ahead. It was a textbook deployment. Professional. Overwhelming. He turned his sensors toward the human fleet. 34 ships. That was all. They hung in orbit around New Helsinki, like a thin line of metal between the Vrexians and the planet below. Valen counted 12 destroyers, 15 frigates, and 7 cruisers. No battleships. No carriers. Nothing that could match the Vrexian force. The mathematics were simple. The humans were outnumbered almost 6-1. They were outgunned even more severely. Any reasonable species would recognize the situation and begin negotiations. Surrender was not shameful when the alternative was destruction. Valen opened the communication channel to monitor the human fleet. He expected to hear panic. He expected to hear fear. He expected to hear desperate calls for reinforcement or frantic discussions about evacuation. Instead, he heard something else. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. The enemy fleet has arrived. You know why we are here. You know what we are protecting. 60,000 souls on the planet below. Our families. Our friends. Our future. Velen listened with growing confusion. The Admiral's voice was calm, steady. There was no fear in it. The Rexians think this will be easy. They think we will run. They think we will surrender. They are wrong. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Today, we fight. All ships, battle stations. Weapons hot. May God be with us all. The channel closed. Velen stared at his screens in disbelief. They were not going to surrender. They were not going to run. 34 ships against 200, and they were going to fight. He quickly checked his equipment. Perhaps he had made an error. Perhaps there were more human ships hiding somewhere. Perhaps reinforcements were coming. But no, there were only 34 ships, and they were moving. The human fleet began to accelerate. Not backward, not sideways, forward, directly toward the Vrexian armada. Velen had observed 17 wars. He had seen desperate last stands and heroic sacrifices. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not just refusing to surrender. They were attacking. The Vrexian commander must have been as confused as Velen. There was a long pause before the reptilian fleet responded. Then, slowly, the Vrexians began to advance as well. 2 fleets, moving toward each other. One massive and confident. One small and apparently insane. Velen adjusted his recording equipment. Whatever happened next, the Ascendancy would want to see it. He expected to document a quick defeat. He expected to record the destruction of the human fleet and the fall of New Helsinki. He was wrong. He was very, very wrong. The 2 fleets were now minutes from contact. Velen watched the distance between them shrink. He noticed that the human ships were not flying in standard defensive formations. They were spreading out, creating gaps, almost inviting the Vrexians to break through their line. It looked like chaos. It looked like incompetence. It looked like a species that did not understand space combat. But something in the back of Velen's mind whispered a warning. Something about the way those human ships moved. Something about the confidence in Admiral Chun's voice. Something about a species that had spent its entire history fighting. The first missiles launched. And Velen Karth, veteran observer of 17 wars, leaned forward in his chair with a feeling he had not experienced in decades. Fear. The missiles flew across the void like streams of light. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The Vrexians fired first, their weapons racing toward the thin human line with deadly precision. Velen expected the human ships to break formation. He expected them to scatter and die. That was what happened when a small fleet faced a larger one. The mathematics of war did not lie. But the humans did not scatter. Their point defense systems came alive. Lasers and kinetic guns filled the space around them with walls of fire. Missiles exploded before reaching their targets. The few that got through struck shields that held firm. And then the humans fired back. Velen watched their missiles launch. They were different from Vrexian weapons. Smaller. Faster. They did not fly in straight lines. They twisted and turned, dodging point defense fire, slipping through gaps in the Vrexian formation. The first Rexian cruiser exploded. Then another. Then another. Valen checked his sensors 3 times. He could not believe what he was seeing. The humans were not just surviving. They were winning. The battle became chaos. Ships twisted and burned across his screens. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Valen tried to track individual vessels, but there was too much happening too fast. He focused on a single human destroyer. The ship was called the UN's Defiance. It was smaller than most Rexian vessels, but it moved like nothing he had ever seen. It dove straight into a group of 3 Rexian cruisers, spinning and firing, taking hits that would have crippled any normal ship. The Defiance destroyed 2 of the cruisers in seconds. The third managed to hit it with a full barrage. Valen watched the destroyer's shields fail. He watched its hull tear open. He watched atmosphere vent into space. Any normal ship would have retreated. Any normal crew would have ejected. The Defiance accelerated. It slammed into the remaining Rexian cruiser at full speed. Both ships disappeared in a ball of fire. Valen sat frozen at his station. He had just watched a crew of 200 humans kill themselves to destroy a single enemy ship. No ejections. No escape pods. They had chosen death over retreat. And the Defiance was not alone. Across the battlefield, human ships fought with the same impossible fury. A frigate with half its hull missing continued to fire until its reactor exploded. A cruiser used its own body to shield a damaged ally, taking hits that melted through its armor. Pilots executed maneuvers that should have killed them from the acceleration alone. Valen pulled up biological data on humans. He found the answer he was looking for. Humans could survive acceleration forces that would knock most species unconscious. Their bodies could function with injuries that would be immediately fatal to other beings. They could continue fighting through pain that would paralyze a Rexian warrior. They were not just brave. They were built for this. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, Valen counted the losses with shaking hands. The humans had lost 19 ships, more than half their fleet. The Rexians had lost 84 ships destroyed and 40 more crippled beyond repair. The mathematics had lied. Or perhaps the mathematics had never accounted for a species that simply refused to accept defeat. Valen filed his report that night. He included all the data, all the recordings, all the impossible things he had witnessed. He expected his superiors to demand explanations. He expected them to question his observations. Instead, they simply did not believe him. Your equipment must have malfunctioned, Director Morath told him over the communication channel. A fleet of 34 ships cannot defeat 200. It is not possible. I watched it happen, Valen replied. I have recordings. Recordings can be corrupted. Sensors can fail. You will remain at your station and continue observation. When the Vrexians send their second fleet, you will see the true outcome of this conflict. The channel closed. Valen sat alone in his station, surrounded by screens showing the aftermath of the battle. Human rescue ships moved through the debris, searching for survivors. They recovered escape pods from destroyed Rexian vessels. They treated wounded enemy soldiers. That confused Valen almost as much as the battle itself. The humans had fought like demons. They had killed without hesitation. And now they were saving their enemies. He did not understand them. He was beginning to think no one in the Ascendancy did. 2 weeks passed. The humans repaired their surviving ships and received reinforcements. Their fleet now numbered 42 vessels. Still a small force. Still nothing that should concern a major power. Then the Vrexians returned. 400 ships this time. Twice the size of the first fleet. The Vrexian Dominion was not making mistakes anymore. They were sending everything they had. Valen received orders to remain at his station. The Ascendancy wanted documentation of humanity's final defeat. They wanted proof that the first battle had been a fluke. He watched the Vrexian armada take position. He watched the human fleet form up to meet them. 42 ships against 400. The mathematics were even worse than before. Admiral Chun's voice came over the communication channel again. Valen had learned to recognize it now. That calm, steady tone that seemed completely disconnected from the reality of the situation. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. The enemy has returned with a larger force. They expect a different result. They are wrong. We held this line 2 weeks ago. We will hold it again. For New Helsinki. For Earth, for humanity. All ships, engage. The second battle began. It was worse than the first. More ships. More missiles. More death. Valen watched human vessels tear into the Vrexian formation with the same suicidal aggression. He watched them take damage that should have destroyed them and keep fighting. He watched crews refuse to abandon their posts even as their ships burned around them. The Vrexians fought hard. They had learned from the first battle. They stayed in tight formations. They concentrated their fire. They tried to overwhelm human ships with numbers. But the humans adapted faster. They broke into small groups that harassed the Vrexian flanks. They used asteroids and debris as cover. They set traps that drew Vrexian ships into killing zones. They fought like they had been doing this for thousands of years. Because Valen realized they had been. The second battle lasted 9 hours. When it ended, the Vrexian fleet was broken. 160 ships destroyed. Another 90 crippled. The survivors fled into faster-than-light travel, running from a force 1/10 their size. The humans had lost 23 ships. They had won again. Valen filed his second report. This time, his hands would not stop trembling. This time, he added a personal note at the end. Recommend immediate upgrade of human threat assessment. This species does not fight like others. They do not think like others. They do not surrender like others. I do not know what they are, but they are not a Category 3 species. They are something else. Something the Ascendancy has never seen. Something dangerous. Director Morath read the report. He did not dismiss it this time. Instead, he ordered Valen to the surface of New Helsinki. Observe their ground forces, the director commanded. Document how they fight on land. We need to understand what we are dealing with. Valen accepted the order with a feeling of dread. He had seen what humans did in space. He was about to learn what they did on the ground. The shuttle descended through thick clouds toward the surface of New Helsinki. Valen watched the landscape appear below him. Endless forests of dark green trees, mountains covered in snow, rivers cutting through valleys like silver ribbons. It was a beautiful world. It was also about to become a battlefield. The Vrexians had landed ground forces before their second fleet was destroyed. 50,000 soldiers in armored transports. They had established bases in the northern mountains and were pushing south toward the human settlements. The humans had 8,000 military personnel to stop them. 8,000 against 50,000. The same impossible numbers that Valen had seen in space. He landed at the human command base near the largest settlement. A colonel named Rodriguez met him at the landing pad. She was a short woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She looked at Valen's observer credentials and nodded. "You are here to watch us fight," she said. It was not a question. Yes, the Ascendancy wishes to understand human military capabilities. Colonel Rodriguez smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Then stay close and try not to die. The Vrexians attacked that night. Valen watched from a bunker on a hilltop as thousands of reptilian soldiers advanced through the forest below. They moved in disciplined formations, their armor gleaming in the moonlight. Artillery fire lit up the darkness. The ground shook with explosions. The humans waited. They had dug trenches and built fortifications across the valley. Machine gun nests covered every approach. Snipers hid in the trees. Mines dotted the ground like invisible death. The Vrexians hit the first defensive line, and the night exploded into chaos. Velen had never seen ground combat before. Space battles were distant, abstract, numbers on a screen. This was different. This was soldiers screaming and dying within sight of his position. This was blood and fire and the smell of burning flesh. The humans fought with the same fury he had seen in space. They did not retreat when the Vrexians broke through their lines. They counterattacked. Small groups of soldiers charged into enemy formations with rifles and grenades. They fought hand-to-hand when their ammunition ran out. He watched a human sergeant named Taurus lead her squad against a Vrexian position. She was hit in the arm early in the assault. The bullet tore through muscle and shattered bone. Any Vrexian soldier would have collapsed from the pain. Taurus wrapped a bandage around the wound with her teeth and kept fighting. She fought for 6 more hours with one arm. When dawn came, her squad had killed 47 Vrexian soldiers and captured an enemy command post. Taurus finally allowed medics to treat her when the battle was over. She had lost so much blood that she should have been unconscious. She was still giving orders when they carried her away. Velen interviewed her in the medical tent 3 days later. "How did you continue fighting?" he asked. "Your injury was severe." The pain must have been extreme. Taurus looked at him with tired eyes. "Pain is just information. You can choose to ignore it. But your body was failing. You should not have been able to function." She shrugged with her remaining good arm. "My people needed me. The mission needed me. I could rest when it was over." Velen did not know how to respond to that. In 40 years of observation, he had never met a species that could simply choose to ignore pain. He had never seen soldiers who would destroy their own bodies to complete a mission. He thought the sergeant was exceptional. He was wrong. She was normal. Over the following weeks, he saw the same behavior repeated across the entire front line. Human soldiers fighting through injuries that would kill other species. Officers refusing evacuation until their units were safe. Medics running into enemy fire to rescue the wounded. And it was not just the military. The human civilians fought too. Velen observed a group of farmers defending a mountain pass against Vrexian shock troops. These were not soldiers. They were ordinary people, old men and young women. They had hunting rifles and homemade explosives. They faced enemies with advanced armor and military training. They held the pass for 3 days. 18 farmers against 200 Vrexian soldiers. When reinforcements finally arrived, 11 farmers were dead. But they had killed 63 enemies and prevented the Vrexians from reaching the settlements in the valley below. Velen asked Colonel Rodriguez about this. "Your civilians fight like soldiers. Why?" The colonel looked at him strangely. "They fight because their homes are threatened. They fight because their families are in danger. What else would they do? Other species would evacuate. They would leave the fighting to trained military forces." Rodriguez shook her head. "Humans do not work that way. When someone threatens our homes, everyone fights. Soldiers, farmers, teachers, everyone. We do not have a word for a civilian who refuses to defend their family, because that person does not exist." Velen began to understand something terrible about humanity. Other species had armies. Humans were an army. Every single one of them. From birth to death, they carried the capacity for violence inside them like a sleeping beast. Most of the time, the beast slept. But when awakened, it consumed everything in its path. The ground war lasted 3 weeks. The Vrexians had every advantage. More soldiers, better equipment, stronger armor. They had been fighting wars for 800 years. None of it mattered. The humans did not just defeat them. They broke them. Valen visited a prisoner camp near the end of the campaign. Captured Rexian officers sat in rows behind fences. Most of them stared at nothing. Some rocked back and forth, mumbling to themselves. One officer, a major who had commanded a battalion, grabbed Valen's arm as he walked past. "They do not stop," the major whispered. His scales had gone pale. His eyes were wide with terror. "We killed them, and they kept coming. We destroyed their positions, and they rebuilt them overnight. We pushed them back, and they attacked from behind. They do not stop. They never stop. They will never stop." He released Valen's arm and began to shake. Valen left the camp with new understanding. The humans had not just won the battle. They had destroyed the enemy's will to fight. The Rexian soldiers were not just defeated. They were traumatized. They would carry the memory of human warfare for the rest of their lives. He returned to the command base to write his report. As he sat down, Colonel Rodriguez approached him with news. "The war is not over," she said. "Our fleet has received reinforcements from Earth. We are not defending anymore." Valen felt his blood run cold. "What do you mean?" Rodriguez smiled that hard, dangerous smile again. "We are counterattacking. We are taking the war to Vrexian space. They attacked our colony. Now we are going to attack theirs." She walked away, leaving Valen alone with his fear. The humans were not satisfied with victory. They were not content to push back the enemy. They were going to invade. They were going to conquer. They were going to show the Vrexians what happened to species that threatened humanity. Valen had thought he understood war. He was only beginning to learn. Valen returned to his observation station with a single question burning in his mind. How? How could a species so young be so effective at killing? How could they fight with such determination? How could they wage war like they had been doing it forever? He needed answers. He needed to understand. He accessed the human historical database and began to read. What he found changed everything. The records went back thousands of years. War after war after war. Valen scrolled through centuries of conflict and found no end to the violence. Humans had been killing each other since they first walked upright on their planet. They had never stopped. He read about something called World War I. It happened over 100 years ago. 20 million humans died. They killed each other with guns and gas and bombs. They dug trenches across entire continents and fed their young men into the slaughter for 4 years. When it ended, they called it the war to end all wars. They were wrong. 20 years later, they started World War II. This time, 17 million died. Entire cities were burned to ash. They created weapons that could kill hundreds of thousands of people in a single flash of light. They built factories specifically designed to murder civilians by the millions. Valen stopped reading and stared at his screen. 70 million. That was more than the entire population of most Ascendancy member species. Humans had killed that many of their own kind in a single war. He forced himself to continue. He learned about something the humans called total war. It was a concept that made his stomach turn. Total war meant no limits, no rules, no distinction between soldiers and civilians. When humans fought total war, they mobilized their entire civilization for destruction. Every factory produced weapons. Every citizen supported the effort. Every resource went to killing the enemy. No other species in the Ascendancy had ever conceived of such a thing. Wars were fought by armies. Civilians stayed safe. Resources were protected. The goal was victory, not annihilation. Humans did not think that way. When humans went to war, they went to war completely. They did not stop until the enemy was utterly destroyed. They did not negotiate while they could still fight. They did not accept anything less than total victory. Valen read about a battle called Stalingrad. The humans fought over a single city for 5 months. 2 million soldiers died. The city was destroyed completely. And still they kept fighting. Both sides poured more and more troops into the ruins until the ground was soaked with blood. He read about a place called Thermopylae. 300 warriors fought against an army of thousands. They knew they would die. They fought anyway. They held their position until the last man fell. He read about the sum. 60,000 humans died in a single day. One day. And the next day, more humans took their place and continued fighting. Velen closed the database and sat in silence. He finally understood. The Vrexians thought they were bringing war to humanity. They were wrong. Humanity had been at war for 10,000 years. The Vrexians were simply the latest enemy in an endless series of conflicts. Velen ran calculations. In the last 3,000 years of human history, there had been only 268 years of total peace. Every other year somewhere on their planet, humans were killing each other. They had developed more weapons, more tactics, more military doctrines than all the species in the Ascendancy combined. They were not learning to fight the Vrexians. They already knew how to fight. They had been practicing on themselves since before most galactic species discovered fire. He understood now why the human soldiers showed no fear. They had been raised in a culture of war. Their stories glorified warriors. Their games simulated battles. Their history was written in blood and fire. Violence was not something strange to them. It was part of who they were. The Ascendancy had maintained peace for millennia because no species wanted to fight. Conflicts were resolved through diplomacy. Wars were short and limited. The goal was always negotiation, not destruction. Humans had a different approach. They maintained peace by being so good at war that fighting them was unthinkable. Their allies knew they would be protected. Their enemies knew they would be destroyed. Peace through strength. Peace through the promise of absolute violence if provoked. Velen thought about the Vrexians. They had attacked the human colony because they thought humans were weak. They thought a young species could be bullied. They thought 60 years of space travel meant nothing. They had made the worst mistake possible. They had awakened the beast. His communication screen activated. Director Morath appeared, his insect face unreadable as always. Velen, the Ascendancy Council has reviewed your reports. They are concerned. They should be, Velen replied. Humans are not like other species. They are something else entirely. The Council has requested your presence. They want a full briefing on human military capabilities. Velen nodded slowly. What are they planning? Director Morath hesitated. That was unusual. In 40 years, Velen had never seen his supervisor hesitate. The humans have invaded Vrexian space. Their fleet has won 3 major battles. They are advancing toward the Vrexian homeworld. I am not surprised. The Vrexian Emperor has requested Ascendancy intervention. He wants us to stop the humans before they reach his planet. Velen felt cold. The Council is considering this? The Council is debating. Some members believe we should protect the Vrexians. They are a recognized power with 8 centuries of membership in the galactic community. Humans are newcomers. The balance of power must be maintained. If the Ascendancy attacks humanity, they will fight back. That is why the Council wants your briefing. They need to understand what they would be facing. Velen stood up from his chair. He looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, human warships were cutting through Vrexian space like a blade through flesh. They were not stopping. They would not stop until it was over. Tell the Council I am on my way, he said. But Director, I must warn you. If the Ascendancy interferes with this war, it will not save the Vrexians. It will simply make the humans angry at us as well. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle. And I have seen what humans do to enemies that make them angry. The Vrexians attacked one colony. The humans are going to burn their entire empire. That is not revenge. That is not cruelty. That is simply how they fight. They do not have another way. Director Morath was silent for a long moment. "Come to the council," he finally said. "Tell them everything you have learned. Tell them about these humans. Make them understand." The screen went dark. Valen began to pack his equipment. He had a presentation to prepare. He had to convince the most powerful species in the galaxy not to start a war with humanity. Because if they did, he knew how it would end. The same way it ended for the Vrexians. The same way it ended for everyone who fought humans. In massacre. The council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 30 species sat in curved rows that rose toward a domed ceiling painted with stars. This was the heart of the Ascendancy, the place where galactic peace had been maintained for 3,000 years. Valen stood at the center, alone and small beneath the gazes of the most powerful beings in known space. "You have observed the humans directly," the High Speaker said. She was an ancient being. Her scales faded with age, but her eyes still sharp. "Tell us what you have learned." Valen activated his presentation. Images appeared in the air above him. Ships exploding. Soldiers fighting. Cities burning. The history of human warfare played across the chamber in silent horror. "I was assigned to observe a minor conflict," he began. "A young species defending a colony against an established power. I expected to watch a quick defeat. I expected to document humanity's introduction to galactic politics." He paused, letting the images speak for themselves. "I was wrong. I watched 2 space battles where human fleets destroyed forces 6 times their size. I watched ground combat where 8,000 soldiers defeated 50,000. I watched farmers with hunting rifles hold mountain passes against armored troops." Murmurs rippled through the council. "Humans do not fight like other species," Valen continued. "They do not surrender when outnumbered. They do not retreat when wounded. They do not negotiate while they can still hold a weapon. They fight until they win or they die. There is no middle ground." The High Speaker leaned forward. "All species have warriors. All species can fight when cornered. With respect, High Speaker, you do not understand. Humans are not warriors when cornered. Humans are always warriors. Their entire history is war. They have been killing each other for 10,000 years. They have developed concepts of warfare that do not exist anywhere else in the galaxy. They do not fight to defend. They fight to destroy." He showed them the statistics, the death tolls of human wars, the weapons they had created, the concept of total war. The council chamber grew silent. "The Vrexians attacked one human colony," Valen said. "In response, humans have invaded Vrexian space with everything they have. They are not looking for peace. They are not looking for negotiation. They are looking for complete victory. They will not stop until the Vrexian Dominion no longer exists as a military power." A Vrexian representative stood, his scales flushed with anger. "This is why we need ascendancy intervention. These humans are savages. They must be stopped." Valen turned to face him. "If the ascendancy intervenes, what do you think will happen? You will defeat them. Your combined fleets outnumber anything humanity can field. Yes, we have more ships. We have more soldiers. We have more resources." Valen let that statement hang in the air. The Vrexians had all of those things too. The representative fell silent. "Humans do not measure wars in ships and soldiers," Valen continued. "They measure wars in will. Their will is stronger than anything I have ever observed. If the Ascendancy attacks humanity, they will not surrender. They will fight. They will fight until they win or until their entire species is dead. There is no other option with them. The High Speaker raised a hand. You are saying we cannot defeat them? I am saying the cost of defeating them would be higher than the ascendancy is willing to pay. Humans do not lose wars because they give up. They only lose wars when they are completely destroyed. Are you prepared to commit genocide against their entire species? Silence, because that is what it would take, Velen said. And even then, I am not certain you would succeed. Humans do not surrender. Even facing extinction, they would fight. They would make the ascendancy bleed for every planet, every station, every ship. Victory against humanity would be measured in the deaths of billions. Your billions, not theirs. The council debated for hours. Velen answered questions, showed evidence, explained again and again what he had witnessed. Some members still wanted to intervene. Some wanted to make an example of humanity. But slowly, the tide turned. Fear won. The ascendancy voted to remain neutral. The Vrexians were on their own. Velen returned to his observation station to watch the end of the war. The human fleet reached the Vrexian homeworld 3 weeks later. 200 ships against the last defenses of an 800-year-old empire. The Vrexians threw everything they had at the humans. It was not enough. The final battle lasted 2 days. When it ended, the Vrexian defense fleet was gone. Human ships hung in orbit around the enemy capital like patient executioners. The humans offered terms. Unconditional surrender. War crime tribunals for leaders who had ordered attacks on civilian targets. Permanent demilitarization of all Vrexian military forces. The Vrexian emperor refused. He broadcast a message across all channels, threatening to destroy human colony worlds if they did not retreat. Velen watched what happened next. 48 hours after the emperor's threat, human marines landed on the Vrexian homeworld. They moved through the capital city with surgical precision. The imperial palace fell in 6 hours. The emperor was dead before sunset. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Velen observed the surrender ceremony 3 days later. The surviving Vrexian leadership gathered in the ruins of their capital to sign documents ending the war. Human soldiers stood guard, their faces calm and professional. Admiral Chun represented humanity. She was the same voice Velen had heard in those first space battles, the calm and steady commander who had led 34 ships against 200. She accepted the Vrexian surrender with dignity. She offered humanitarian aid. She promised reconstruction assistance. She was kind. That was the most terrifying thing of all. Velen had expected monsters. He had expected cruelty and bloodlust. But the humans who conquered the Vrexian homeworld were not monsters. They were professionals. They did not hate their enemies. They did not enjoy the destruction they had caused. They simply did not know how to fight any other way. Humans, Velen realized, had only 2 modes: peace and total war. There was nothing in between. When they were at peace, they were kind and generous and welcoming. When they were at war, they were utterly ruthless. They did not torture. They did not prolong suffering. They simply destroyed everything in their path until the threat was gone. The Vrexians had mistaken human kindness for weakness. They had thought the young species could be bullied. They had learned the truth too late. Velen filed his final report to the Ascendancy that night. He included all his observations, all his analysis, all his recommendations. His conclusion was simple: do not go to war with humanity. Not because they are evil, not because they are cruel, but because they are better at war than any species has ever been. They have been practicing for 10,000 years. They have weapons we cannot imagine and tactics we cannot predict. They do not surrender. They do not negotiate under threat. They do not stop until it is over. He paused before writing his final words. I was assigned to observe humans in combat. I expected to witness a massacre. I was correct. But the massacre was not what anyone predicted. It was not humans being destroyed by a superior enemy. It was humans systematically dismantling an empire that dared to threaten them. If the Ascendancy values peace, it must ensure we never give humanity a reason to see us as enemies. Because I have seen what they do to enemies. I have seen the fire in their eyes and the steel in their hearts. I have seen soldiers smile as they died fighting. They are not monsters. They are something far more dangerous. They are humans, and they will not stop until it is finished. Velen sent the report and turned off his equipment. Outside his window, the stars burned in the darkness. Somewhere out there, humanity was celebrating victory. They would mourn their dead and rebuild their damaged worlds. They would return to peace and kindness and the gentle side of their nature, until the next time someone threatened them. And then the galaxy would learn the same lesson the Vrexians had learned. You do not fight humans. You do not threaten humans. You do not give humans a reason to go to war. Because when humans go to war, there are no limits. There is no mercy. There is only victory or death. And humans do not lose. Velen closed his eyes and wondered what the future held. The galaxy had a new power now. A species unlike any other. A species that had conquered death itself through sheer force of will. The Ascendancy would have to adapt. They would have to accept humanity as equals. They would have to hope that the humans remain peaceful. Because the alternative was too terrible to imagine. The end of peace, the beginning of war, and the massacre that would follow.